Well, good afternoon, friends. We're back for our backstage continuation of our conversation um, of our episode Face to Face with Racism on costumes and mascots. And we have our second guest with us, Silver Perry. And so, since Silver hasn't had a chance to share, we'll start with them. Silver, take a moment to introduce yourself to us. And then we've been talking about costumes and mascots as a form of covert racism and white supremacy. So welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Silvernez Perry. I am from the Navajo Nation here in northeastern Arizona. Um, I am from the tobacco red running into the water people and born for the red sheep people. My maternal grandparents are water flows together, and my paternal grandparents are the near the water people, and that's how we introduce ourselves among our people. It's a form of kinship, so we know that we have relatives outside of our immediate and extended family. So wherever I go, whether it's on the reservation or off the reservation, when I do introduce myself that way, uh, somewhere there'll be someone that has the same clan as mine, and they'll be related to me that way. So uh, currently, I stay home and I take care of my elder father, um, and uh, pretty much just kind of hang out and really not do much of anything except just take care of my dad. So, um,
Well, now, I know that
and as
that's not
far as
exactly true. That you, I know it's not exactly
what's
true that
that?
you don't do anything because I know that you don't let your shadow grow very long.
That's well, yeah, that's true. I stay busy, and I just actually got back from running, so um, it was a little smoky. It was a little hard for me to breathe out here, but I went ahead and did it anyway. So, yeah, we tend to stay busy as much as possible. It's just traditional Navajo teachings where we're always asked, "What is your shadow doing?" Make sure your shadow isn't sitting still for so long. So yeah, the majority I do some work outside, but I also like to relax for a little bit.
So,
So we are talking about mascots. Is that the topic of the day?
yes.
Um, there's a lot of yeah, there's a lot of controversy around it. Um, personally, from my standpoint, I am not keen on having mascots that supposedly represent the indigenous people. Um, it's just something that we grew up with. We are just not looked at as symbols or um, mascots because that's not who we are. We are individual people. We are individual nations. There are over 570 uh, federally recognized Indian nations in the United States, as well as over 200 state recognized Indian nations. And so to group us in a one big lump, um, for example, like with the Washington Redskins, they have the feathered headdresses. As Navajo people, we don't wear those. It's not something that's for us. That's
Wait,
something that's specifically for the plains.
you don't wear feathered headdresses,
So no, we don't. We don't wear feathered headdresses.
but
That's just
I thought
something
that
that's
okay. I thought that was
go ahead.
Native American.
No. No, absolutely not. That's something that is specifically for the Great Plains Indian nations, from the Comanches to the Cheyennes to the Lakotas. They are the ones that wear the traditional feathered headdresses. We don't have anything like that. So what you see, um, like at the football games, the Washington Redskins football games, the people that wear the quote unquote war bonnet, that's not for each Native American tribe. We have our own type of regalia, and it varies from tribe to tribe. Even with the feathered bonnets that the Plains Indian tribes wear, each tribe has their own way of obtaining those feathered bonnets. Um, each feather is earned. It's not something that you just put together. Um, and that's where a lot of people think that just because you have a feather bonnet on your head, it's considered a costume. It's not. Each one of those feathers have to be earned. Very similar to like people who are in the military. They've got they earn those bars or those whatever it's called that they wear on their uniform. Each one of those are earned, and that's the same way it is with the headdresses. Each feather is earned. It's just not something that you would put together and wear it. So, but a lot of people think that just because it's something that you see and it's a costume, and that goes all the way back to um, the early start of Hollywood westerns when they had um, back in the day when they were filming like John Wayne fighting against the cowboys and Indians kind of thing. They always used feathered head bonnets, and from there the stereotype started that if we are Indian, then we all wear the head bonnets, and that's not true. If you take a look at a lot of the southwestern tribes, the Navajos, the Pueblos of New Mexico and Arizona, the Havasupai, the Supais of the Grand Canyon, we don't have those feather bonnets. We have our own traditional type of headdress, and it's not anything near to what those feather bonnets are. So going back to Hollywood, there is a thing on YouTube called Real REEL Engine INGUN, and it goes through the stereotypes that we've been put under from Hollywood. So it's a really good documentary. It's about a little over an hour long, and so that uh, ties back into costumes when it comes to Halloween. There are a lot of people out there that want to dress up like the Indian. They have the costume there, and it's just something that I personally don't think that you know I don't consider myself to be a costume. Um, I'm an individual person. I'm Navajo, and I don't agree with it. But there are a lot of people who just even among the tribes, there are people out there who just really don't care if people dress up like Indians. But personally, I just don't want to do that. And I've had a few friends dress up like that on Halloween, and it just I just tell them I said I'm not a costume. I wouldn't appreciate you dressing up to be like me. But then if you take a look at um, a few years back, they had among those runway models wearing the females were out there wearing the feathered hair bonnets and skimpy clothing. and that's what a lot of people see. They want to be this quote unquote Indian princess. Tribes, they don't believe in royalty. So the stereotype of being that Indian princess, it's ridiculous. And, you know, I travel a lot through the powwow, and I've always hear a lot of people say to me that, you know, I'm part Indian. My grandmother was the great granddaughter of a Cherokee princess. That's the common thing that we hear all the time. And we laugh about that amongst ourselves. And we always say if we had $1 for every time someone said that to us, we'd be rolling in money. And so that's another thing that people, media likes to uh, sensationalize this Indian princess concept where they're wearing skimpy clothing. Um, each one of our tribes have our own different types of regalia, and it's always um, covered. The body's covered majority of the time. We're not in like bikini type clothing. And each one of these regalias that we put on, our clothing that we put on, our traditional clothing, they all have their own stories. They all have their own um, songs. They all have their own prayers on how they came about. So you don't see us walking around in bikini type clothing saying that this is how Indians dress. And you see it if you ever go to Vegas and walk down the strip. You'll see a lot of these people that work there dressed up like Indian princesses, with the head bonnets and the skimpy clothes, or they have a guy in a head bonnet with just the breechcloth on, and that's just a stereotype. They and people really look at that and automatically think, well, this is what all Indians look like, and I always have a problem with that word. I always tell people we're not Indians. We are the indigenous people of Turtle Island, and that's what we refer to the United States and Canada. We refer to it as Turtle Island because it looks like a turtle. And like I said, there are over 500 tribes that live on Turtle Island, and we all have our own language. We all have our own culture. We have our own history, and despite what we've all been through from the very beginning, when supposedly Columbus discovered this place, we're still here. We still speak our language. We still um, practice our traditions, and that's what we try to hold on to. So we try and teach people about what it means to be native, what it means to be indigenous, and I walk around and I try to explain to them that Indian is not it's not a word that I prefer. I would rather be called Jinneh. That's what I am. Um, and it's the same way with a lot of the Lakota people. There's so many different Lakotas out there. They're just not one group. Um, there's Dakota, there's Nakota, there's so many others, and they all have their own uh, language and stuff like that. So I think just educating people about the different types of Native Americans that are here and the different types of clothing that we wear would definitely help with getting people away from the stereotypes that we all wear head bonnets and we all wear war paint. We don't. War paint is something that Hollywood came up with. There's no such thing as war paint among Native American people. You know, yes, the Plains Indian tribes used to paint their faces, but that was only done through ceremony. It's not something that We go around and put red streaks across our cheek. That there was specific reasons why those were chosen, the colors those were chosen. Even if you go back and look at the history of the Plains Indian nations, um, the symbols that were painted on the horses, they each have their own meaning, their own story, their own prayers, their own songs. It's just not something that we just made it a design to do just because we wanted to. And it's the same with the Navajo people, the Diné. We um, we don't do it anymore, but there was a time in our history where we did have red marks on our cheeks, but it was all for ceremonial purposes. So that whole stereotype that all Indians wear the head bonnets and wear the war paints, that's something Hollywood came up with, and so that's what we're stuck with today. And that goes back into the costumes and the mascots, and it's just something that each individual has to deal with it on their own. We do have a high school here on the reservation. They're called Red Mesa Redskins, and I don't know why they continue to use that name. I've never asked them about it. I've never really talked to anyone in the community on how they feel about it. But there are some people out here that don't enjoy that name, and I always try to tell people that you take look at the words chief and warrior and scout and redskin and squaw. Those each have their own different meaning, and I always try to educate people that when we use the word chief, we're talking about someone who has earned the honor to lead their people, whatever nation they're from. Someone was given that honor. It was bestowed upon him or her to become the leader, and that's what a chief is. It's not a mascot. Warrior is someone who has the honor to take care of the people, the elderly, the children, the females, the other males of the nation. Those were people that were given the honor. It was bestowed upon them, and so it was not something that someone just says, "Oh, I'm going to be a warrior today." It was something that you have to work hard for, and given that honor, which comes with the respect of being called a warrior or chief. A scout was someone who used their ability to track. Back in the day, they were able to track animals and see where the game was going, which directions they were going. And so, each individual that was a scout had a particular ability to do their job as a scout. And squaw is something that Hollywood came up with. We don't call any of our female squaws. Um, and we as Native American people, we live in a matrilineal society, so that the female is the head of the household. So we have high respect for our female, especially our elderly women. And so, calling them a squaw would be totally disrespectful. And again, that's something that Hollywood came up with. Um, and also the Indian is something Hollywood came up with. Like I said, each individual tribe has their own traditional name. Like for Navajo, we call ourselves Diné, and so it just goes on and on. San Juan Pueblo in New Mexico call themselves Okewinge. And so, each tribe has their own name. So we don't like to refer to ourselves as Indian. Um, so it's something that we just have to learn to educate people, let them know about who we are as individual people. We're people, we're human beings on this earth, and to I think that a lot of people just are not educated about Native Americans because it's something that is not taught in schools. If you
You're,
look at the curriculum, and go ahead.
well, I just wanted to kind of pause. Your comments have raised a lot of thoughts and questions. And I think one of the most profound things that I've heard you say is, I am not a costume. I am not a costume.
Yes.
And I was thinking about um, my own place as ordained clergy and how I would feel if people went out and took my ceremonial robes and things that I wore for very sacred reasons and turned them into a costume. I think my response would be,
Yeah.
I am not a costume, right? This is my vocation. This is how I live out my divine calling in the world. And these are symbols and signs of that. They're not playthings. Um, and I was also struck by your description of the chief as someone who has been bestowed an honor to lead their people and not a mascot, which made me think of, for example, the Washington Senators. Now, we don't have a team called the Senators anymore, and I'm wondering why. I'm wondering if at some point some senators, some real senators said, hey, you know what? We're not a mascot. We're actually people who have been elected and endowed with a sacred privilege and responsibility to represent people. We're not a mascot to, um, we're not a mascot. Um, I was also thinking about your earning of the feathers and your relation to the bars of a military officer. Now, certainly people dress up as soldiers or sailors or, you know, in costume, but I wonder if they start emulating too closely a specific officer or specific decorations, or if a person wore a Purple Heart as a costume, how how people in the dominant culture might feel about that. Is that appropriate to wear a Purple Heart as a costume?
Well, there was a time on the news, I think a couple years ago, that some guy was walking around in a shopping mall or someplace, and he was pretending to be a veteran, and he, um, if I remember correctly, had gotten his um, uniform from like a army surplus store or something like that, and he was walking around pretending to be a veteran, and a lot of people uh, got upset, and this whole stolen valor thing came about, and it really just made me think, that all these people are getting upset at him for pretending to be a veteran, but they don't get upset at us when we, you know, they tell us to get over it when we start to say, that we're not costumes, so stop trying to dress up like Native people or Indians. That's the response that we get all the time is get over it. You know, um, if I were to say that to someone who was complaining about someone else being a veteran, then I'd still get shunned for it. And it's just something that's just the way it is today. That's the response from majority of the people. They tell us to get over it. They do that with the mascots, with the um, formerly Washington Redskins, the Atlanta Braves, Cleveland Indians. They just people would rather just tell us to get over it when we're trying to tell them that we're not mascots, we're people, we're human beings. That's what we are, and so that we are so far from trying to educate um, the majority of the people around us about what it means to be native and what it means to be indigenous. Um, I I go back to I don't enjoy the word native. Um, I would rather use indigenous, and that's who we are. And so um, there's a lot that we still need to do to teach the people about you know um, why it's inappropriate to be characterized as a mascot or a costume. Um, if you look at the Halloween costumes, it's usually just some skimpy attire for the females and then like a breechcloth for the males. We don't dress
Yeah.
like that.
I wonder.
Uh, and so,
Our Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to see if Tony had any thoughts or responses. We're sort of lopsided in our conversation here, but before we run out of time, I wanted to just offer some space.
No, I'm just enjoying listening, Silver. Like you said, Jeffrey, I had plenty of time to speak with you and Heather in the first half hour, but um, I'd say there's times when I'm suspicious of using power dynamics in conversations like this, and this is not one of them. I think the idea that people don't listen because they don't have to listen rings very true to me. And I don't know. I don't know if I have anything further. That struck me deeply, and I think it's very sad.
Yeah, can you say more about the power dynamic? You mean in the play
Yeah, I guess
between?
I guess it without thinking this through more deeply. Um,
Uh, yeah, you froze for a minute there.
okay,
I,
did you miss a question?
no, I heard you say without thinking this through more deeply.
Yeah, so just speaking extemporaneously, I think that comes to I don't even remember the line that I wrote, but I believe in treating people as individuals, and I think sometimes that can be. I think sometimes studying power dynamics or looking for the power dynamics can disrupt the disrupt treating people as individuals, and I'm not sure that's always helpful. But despite my concern over that issue, when Silver mentioned the powers at play here, it just rang very true to me, as this is a case where that's particularly important, that people don't listen when they don't have to listen often, and even when that includes being disrespectful or hurtful or insensitive to what was it, Silver? You said 572 federally recognized
76.
tribes.
76. 576.
That blows my mind. I mean, I would have.
And and that's reservation. That's nations that are being recognized by the federal government. So, and then there are over 200 that are not recognized by the federal government, but they are uh, recognized by the state. And it's so difficult to try and get federal recognition from the government. And it seems like we are in this constant battle, uphill battle to be recognized for a lot of things. And my grandmother, who was a professor at NAU, told us one time that there are 5,000 more laws against Native American people than there are against the average American. So we are constantly having to battle all these different laws just to prove who we are. Native people are the only people in the United States that have to prove their blood quantum, just like dogs and horses. That's it's something that uh, we have to deal with. We can't. We're always having to prove people that we're native, and it's tiresome sometimes. But in the long run, the longer we teach our kids who we are, where we're coming from, and then to teach the outsiders who we are, then we're bridging that gap closer and closer, and I think that's the most important thing.
Well, we really appreciate both of you for being here and giving your time and knowledge, transparency, vulnerability. All of that stuff is really important to these conversations, and we're very grateful to have you both here. Silver, it was really good to see you, and I'm hoping that next year we'll be able to see you in person next summer.
Right,
and
right.
look forward to having this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Continue. All right, take care.
Thank you.